Yaakov was a complete person who would be studying in the tents of Shem and Aver, dedicating his life to Torah and mitzvahs. It states that Yaakov is preparing a meal, as Rashi tells us, for Yitzhak. When Avraham died, he was preparing the meal for the mourners. Esav comes, and Esav is exceptionally exhausted, that he was out in the field, and he was engaged in some warfare, and Esav is without any energy. He says to Yaakov, please give me some of this red stuff that you're making, and I am too exhausted, I'll just open my mouth, pour it in. Yaakov realizing that Esav, although he was considered the firstborn, was unfit for the spiritual blessings associated with the birthright. He states to Esav, Michrech hayom es b'cheiras chali, sell to me today your birthright. Esav says, Hinan haichi hailech lamus, I'm going to die. The life that I lead, I could die tomorrow. What's the difference? And therefore he agreed to sell it to Yaakov. It states that Yaakov gave Esav bread and he gave him the lentils, the soup, and vayochal vayesh, Esav ate it, he drank, vayokom vayelach, he got up, he walked around, he left, vayivez Esav es habuchera, and Esav despised the birthright. Sages tell us that Yaakov and Esav at this point were 15 years old. This is when Abraham died. Abraham was 175, and Yitzhak, at this particular point in time, we know was 75 years old. Yaakov and Esav were born when Yitzhak was 60. Now they are 15, so he's 75. Abraham is 175, and this is when he passes away and he dies. Why does the verse have to tell us that Esav, he eats and he drinks? That we understand. But then it says he got up and he walked around. Of what relevance is it that the Torah is telling us Esav got up and he walked? It could just say he ate, he drank, and he despised the birthright. Our sages tell us that this is to inform us that Esav, don't think that when Esav sold the birthright that he wasn't functioning with his proper faculties. Maybe he was so overwhelmed from fatigue and starvation that he couldn't think right. Therefore, it tells us that he ate, he drank, he was calm, he was composed, and he was healthy. And he got up and he walked around like a healthy, perfect human being, and nevertheless, he despised the birthright. Sforno says that he sold the birthright for whatever price, and he believes that he made a killing, that whatever Yaakov gave was far too much, that the birthright is something which is despicable. By Yivez, he despised it. Yet we find that 48 years later, when Yaakov and Esav are 63 years old, and this is when Yitzhak calls them, when Yitzhak is now 123, he calls upon Esav and he wants to give him a blessing. And he says to Esav, I want you to sharpen your utensils and go out and hunt for me and bring me the food that I like to eat. And this way I will be able to give you the blessing. Why does he tell Esav, hunt for me? What does that mean? And what does it mean, sharpen your utensils? Make sure if you're going to slaughter the animal, it will be done appropriately with a proper shechita according to halacha, because that's the only way I will eat it. And hunt for me. Make sure that when you hunt, you don't steal someone else's animals, but you rather take something which is abandoned property. It belongs to no one. From here, we see that Yitzhak had an insight as to Esav's character. Nevertheless, he felt that Esav was worthy of the blessing that he wished to bestow upon him, which was a blessing for the material success in this world, not the spiritual necessarily. Rivka, upon hearing this, she instructs Yaakov to masquerade and impersonate Esav so that he should receive the blessings. Indeed, Yaakov, compelled by his mother's mitzvah, does so. He goes to Yitzhak. Yitzhak, not recognizing Yaakov, assumes it's Esav and gives him the bracha. As Yaakov takes leave, Esav comes, says to his father, give me a bracha. Yitzchak says, who are you? He says, I'm Esav. He says, well, then who was that I just gave the bracha to? Upon which Yitzchak recognizes that it was indeed Yaakov. He sensed with Yaakov the presence of the Garden of Eden. And now he senses with Esav the presence of Gehenna Purgatory. And he says, Gam Baruch Yihye. Indeed, the blessings I recognize that I gave to Yaakov, our sages tell us, they took proper effect, and the blessing shall remain. Upon hearing this, Esav cries out. Yitzhak cries out greatly, and it was bitter. My father, give me a blessing. And Yitzhak says, but I gave the blessings to Yaakov. And he says again, he says, it's no wonder you called him Yaakov, because he has tricked me twice. He took my birthright, and now he's taken my blessing. Sages ask, what do you mean he took your birthright? You sold the birthright. You willingly sold it. Now all of a sudden, Esav says, I regret the sale. That sale was no good. That sale was null and void. It wasn't appropriate. What exactly is happening with Esav? How is it? Our sages ask, the Or Yahel asks, Rabbi Yehuda Lev Chasman, Zechron Levracha asks, was Esav such a fool? Yes, the birthright carries with it tremendous responsibilities. Yes, there are spiritual requirements that Esav wasn't interested in, but it also entails great blessing. The birthright, the firstborn, to get these blessings from your father. How is it that Esav would be so foolish that he would just sell the birthright? We can understand that maybe when he was famished and he was in a weakened state, that he agreed to sell it. But when the verse says that he ate and he drank and he got up and he walked around and he was fully healthy and he was now in control of his faculties, at that point, why didn't Esav scream out? Why didn't he say, Yaakov, what kind of trick are you pulling on me? I'm not selling this birthright. Yes, I know it has tremendous responsibilities, but it also has great reward. I can get and earn a blessing from our father, our holy father, Yitzhak. I'm not going to sell it to you. But on the contrary, not only does he not protest, but vayivez, he despises the birthright. How do we comprehend this? The Or Yahel states that we see something very interesting, and that is there are people who make mistakes. We all make mistakes. There are some people who make mistakes, and rather than face our own weakness, the fact that we are fallible, the fact that we are not perfect, rather than face the mistakes that we made, we rather justify them, rationalize, come up with a philosophy and ideology and whatever it might be. This was Esav. Esav, it could be, was extremely fatigued, and that's why he agreed to sell his birthright. And he knew the value of the birthright. He knew the birthright contains magnificent opportunities in addition to the responsibilities. Like anything in life, the greater the responsibility, the greater the reward. But he made a decision. And even after he ate and he drank, and he got up and he walked around, and he was now in full control of his faculties, and he was healthy, and he could think and he could reason, rather than Esav say, Yaakov, I made a terrible mistake. I think you took advantage of me, and the sale is not valid. I'm protesting the sale. And Yaakov would have had to agree. You're right. Okay, fine. But rather than admit that perhaps he had made a mistake, he made an error in his judgment. On the contrary, he came to reinforce his decision, and vayivez es habechira. He despised the birthright. If the birthright is something that I sold, then it must be not worth possessing. And he despised it. He would reinforce, and he submitted himself to his own foolish decisions. This we see amongst the wicked. Only 48 years later, when he's 63 years old, and his elderly father, Yitzhak, wants to present the blessings, now he recognizes his folly. Now he recognizes how foolish I was that I sold my birthright and I've lost these blessings. contrast Esav with the behavior of Yehuda. Yehuda made a decision that his daughter-in-law Tamar, who he assumed was pregnant from another man when she was destined for his son, and he assumed that she was deserving of death, and he discovers that indeed he's the father of the children that she carries. What does Yehuda do? Does Yehuda justify his decision? Does he rationalize his decision? Does he say, I'm a king? Does he say, look at the humiliation, look at the scandal that'll be involved if people learn and discover that I'm the father for my own daughter-in-law? What does Yehuda do? He states publicly, she is right. Tzodka mimeni. She is righteous, she is correct. I am the father. I am the one who made the mistake. She was right. I should have given her to my son, and I did not, and therefore the yibum that was performed before the Torah was given, even with a father-in-law, I should have done that, I didn't, and this is what Hashem created. He publicly humiliated himself, and he said, I was wrong. I am sorry, and I was wrong. To be able to say I am wrong indicates a pursuit of the truth. It indicates that emes, truth, is so important that we cannot live, our lives have no purpose if we are filled with deception. But Esav made a terrible mistake. And what does he do? He had an opportunity to correct it. Certainly he knew the value of the birthright, but if he went ahead and sold it, far be it from Esav to ever admit he made an error. There are not only people like Esav in this world who place their pride and their own arrogance above the pursuit of truth, but there might be a little bit of Esav in each and every one of us. Nobody likes to admit when we've made a mistake and we've made a decision that was really foolish. However, we are the children of Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, and we are the ones who are the Yehudim. We're given that name because we emulate the character of Yehuda. And when we are facing the truth, the ultimate truth, whether it's comfortable or not, the greatest thing we could do is say, I made a mistake. We have a Yom Kippur in which we say, Al Chet, Hashem, I made a mistake. Forgive me, pardon me, atone. I made a mistake. The ability to say, I was wrong and I made a mistake. It's not just reserved for husbands. It's reserved for each and every one of us to be able to realize that Hashem is the ultimate truth, His Torah is the ultimate truth, and our pursuit of truth, therein lies not only the revelation of one's true character, but the secret for a fulfilling and a happy life. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay Jewish. Have a good Shabbos.